Hi, I'm Casey. I'm a professor in an information science department, and I've also been running PhD admissions in our department for a number of years now. I've already done a series of videos about the PhD application process. And in fact, I thought that I was done with them, but I've actually had a large number of requests to do a video specifically about statements of purpose. Now, I actually think that my general advice about statements of purpose have been covered in my other videos, and in particular, the one about application tips. So there's going to be some redundancy here, but I thought that I would do a video with perhaps some more specific tips about statements of purpose. So I'm actually going to give you 5 things that I think you need to do in a statement of purpose for a PhD program. Some of these might apply to master's programs as well, particularly research-based master's programs. At the end of this video, I'll do a little bit of speculation about how I think a statement of purpose for a master's degree might be a little bit different from a PhD, but my advice here is mostly useful if you are applying to PhD programs, and particularly for PhD programs that are in more lab-based disciplines like STEM fields. So the first thing that you need to do in a statement of purpose is convince me that you actually want to get a PhD and that you want to get a PhD for the right reasons. So I did a video about good reasons and bad reasons to want to get a PhD, and I will link to that so you can check it out if you want some more ideas. But in general, there are some reasons that are particularly easy to articulate in a statement of purpose. One is that you love research. Research is your passion. You know that you want a career doing research, and you are super excited about spending the next 5 or 6 years of your life while making no money doing nothing but research. Similarly, you can express how you care so deeply about a particular topic that you are committed to and passionate about adding new knowledge to the world on that topic. And maybe you want to change the world through this. Maybe you want your research to have impact. Impact is actually a great thing that you can talk about. So for example, a lot of my research is about technology ethics. I read a lot of statements of purpose from students who talk about how they want to make the world better through decreasing bias and creating more ethical technology and figuring out how to do that through research. Another reason you might want to get a PhD is because you really want to teach. This is probably not something to emphasize as much in your statement of purpose. Wanting to teach, wanting to be a professor can be a good reason to get a PhD, but in terms of what you're being evaluated on for entrance into a research-based PhD program, is your research potential. So you can certainly mention that you aspire to a career in academia in part because you love research and you love teaching, but definitely do not write your entire statement of purpose about how you want to be a teacher. Except, of course, in some circumstances, like maybe if you're studying education or if you are applying to a particular PhD program where you know that there's a really heavy teaching emphasis. All right, the second thing that you need to do in a statement of purpose is describe your research experience and motivations. This can really tie in very well to the previous one, why do you want a PhD? Maybe you have research experience already and this is how you learned to love it and know that this is what you want to do more of. Why do you love research? What have you already done? What did you learn from doing it? How did it make you really want to explore this topic even more? Have you contributed to research projects and papers written about those projects? Did you love that process and can't wait to lead your own research project? Have you already done your own research project and you can't wait to do 5 more of them? One really important thing that you can do in a statement of purpose is prove to me that you know what research is, what it entails, and therefore I will be confident that it's what you really want to do and that you are going to see this through to the end. So even if you don't have as much research experience, you should take the opportunity to talk about how you know that's what you want to do in terms of your own motivation and passion for it. The third thing that you need to do is show your passion and ideas for a particular research topic. Now, one really tricky thing about this is that you need to be kind of specific, but not too specific. So for example, you can't write a statement of purpose that says, I am applying to a PhD program in computer science because I want to do computer science research. That is way too vague, broad. Even something like technology ethics is probably too broad. I want to study technology ethics. On the other hand, it's also probably not a good idea to propose a very specific dissertation topic in your statement of purpose. What you want is something in between technology ethics and I want to study the ethical implications of this particular algorithm on this particular platform in order to do X, Y, and Z. So something kind of in between that might be, I am really interested in how algorithmic bias propagates injustice in institutions. That shows that you have something that you are interested in, but there are lots of different kinds of directions that you could take depending on, in particular, who ends up being your faculty advisor and what kinds of work they're doing. So for example, if someone mentioned algorithmic bias in their statement of purpose for our PhD program, I can think of two other faculty members besides myself who could potentially be advisors depending on sort of which direction you decide to go with it. And that is really good. So it's great to talk about your topic in terms of the specific discipline and the specific specialties of that department. Which brings me to the next thing that is really important to do in a statement of purpose, which is show that you are applying to that program for a reason. You need to demonstrate that the program is a good fit for you and that you've done your research. Do not send the exact same statement of purpose to every program. It's very easy to tell when you've done that, and it suggests either that you don't know enough about your own interests to have narrowed down programs that are the best for you, or that you just haven't done your research. It could be that you have extremely broad interests and you are willing to kind of go wherever and then adjust your research when you get there. If that's the case, you still need to do some upfront work. Figure out how you would adjust your interest to that particular program and write your statement of purpose with that in mind. The biggest tip for this is to mention specific faculty members, and definitely more than one. This can actually really help you to think about how to adjust the way that you're describing your research topic so that it might fit into the interests of multiple faculty members. So the example that I just gave of someone who is interested in algorithmic bias, one of my colleagues studies fairness in recommendation systems. One of my colleagues studies algorithmic and digital identity. And of course, I do sort of general ethics related technology work. You could see how you could talk about algorithmic bias and mention things like fairness and identity and designing ethical technology, and that would make sense. You can see a way that you could talk about algorithmic bias as a general interest and then say, one of the reasons that I am interested in this particular program is because I see so many connections with my interests and the faculty there who are studying things like algorithmic identity, algorithmic fairness, and designing ethical technology. And again, this is a reason why you don't want to be too specific with your topic, because you don't want faculty to read it and say, ooh, that's not really what I'm doing. I'm not sure if I can advise this specific topic. So it's also good to be able to demonstrate some flexibility. I know that what I've just described seems like it's really towing a tricky line, and it kind of is. This is one of the reasons why I think that it's really good to reach out to faculty members that you might be interested in advising you before you turn in your statement of purpose. I gave some advice about this in my PhD application tips video, and I will also link below to a Twitter thread where I suggested a kind of template for how to reach out to faculty. Learning from someone what kinds of things they're working on and also what other faculty they might recommend that you talk to can really help you think about how to frame your interests so that they're appropriate for that department. And finally, the last thing that you need to do in a statement of purpose is demonstrate that you can write. Writing is a huge part of getting a PhD. You will write papers and publish them, and of course, you will write an entire dissertation, which is basically a book. I will say that for me personally, a student who can write well is very compelling as a PhD applicant. The reason is because I can teach someone how to do a lot of things. I can teach you how to conduct interviews. I can teach you how to do statistical analysis. I can even teach you how to sort of structure an academic paper. But teaching someone to write well is actually quite difficult. It's sometimes something that you can have a kind of natural talent for or have just already had a lot of experience writing, because you really do get better at writing with practice. Now, that said, I am not suggesting that if you're not as good of a writer that you are out of luck. But even something as simple as not having errors in your statement can be really important. Make sure that other people have read it, that it has been proofread, that it has a good narrative. Even if you're not the world's most amazing storyteller or writer, something that is clear and does not have mistakes can really go a long way. So those are the 5 things that I think it's really important for a statement of purpose to do. And let me be clear about something that a statement of purpose is not. It is different than a personal statement like you would write for an undergrad college application. This is not about the life-changing summer that you spent tutoring underprivileged children. We do not need your life story. We need to know about your potential and passion for research. That said, there might be times when there are personal things that you want to include. Maybe there's something that happened during your undergrad degree that really stalled your progress, and you might need to explain something about your grades or a gap in your education or something like that. You can certainly do that. Just make sure that that's not the emphasis. Also, sometimes programs will have a separate personal statement, and if that's the case, that's where you can do that kind of thing instead of in your statement of purpose. Statement of purpose means, here is my purpose for getting a PhD. Here's what I'm gonna do with it. Also, if you have, for example, been out of school for a long time, you've been working, etc., my suggestion for a statement of purpose is to focus on the things about your career that are related to research, and the things that aren't don't really need to be talked about that much. But maybe, for example, something in your career really led you to want to pursue research, in which case that is a perfectly acceptable thing to talk about. Similarly, if you are applying to a master's program that is more a professional master's instead of a research-based master's, it might be really important to portray that you are doing this in order to further your professional career in some way. Because getting a master's degree does not necessarily mean that you're going to be getting a degree in research. But some of those things still apply. It should be well written. It should demonstrate the kind of relevant experience you have, and it should show why you want to go to that particular program. For a master's degree, this might include things like coursework. For a PhD, don't mention courses. It just does not matter for a PhD program what classes you happen to take. For a master's program, it might. So I actually went and found the statement of purpose that I wrote for my PhD application for the program that I went to, the PhD program in human-centered computing at Georgia Tech. I don't talk about my own experiences in applying to PhD programs very much in these videos because I had a strange kind of experience in that a number of years before that, I applied to a whole bunch of them and got rejected from all of them. So whatever I did then was probably not best practice. Then I went to law school, and when I applied for PhDs after law school, I only applied to one program because I had a geographic constraint. So I was very fortunate that I got into this program. So I hadn't read the statement of purpose in about a decade. I started my PhD in 2009. And I'll be honest, I didn't think this was an amazing statement of purpose. There are definitely things I did not do or things that I did that I wouldn't recommend. And in particular, the big one was I do not mention any specific faculty members in my statement of purpose. What was I thinking? I did, however, mention specific research topics that I know are things that were being explored in the department at that time. So I'm not going to read you the whole thing, in part because it's long and in part because parts of it are not particularly good, but I will share a couple of things from it that I think did some things particularly well. As I mentioned, I applied to PhD programs out of law school, and so one of the things I was trying to do in my statement of purpose was demonstrate why I still wanted to get a PhD even though I had a law degree, and also how my background in the law was going to make me a compelling PhD student. For example, I talked about how I saw the intersection of human-centered computing and law as an underdeveloped, underexplored, yet very rich area. I also talked about how I was frustrated with the lack of empiricism in legal scholarship and how I thought that there was a huge opportunity for research at that intersection. So for example, here is a line from my personal statement. There are things that traditional legal research has limited me from pursuing. So many of the answers in law review articles are, here is what the law allows people to do. But what I want to know is why they do these things and how technology might facilitate it. I also talked about my research experience, both what I had done before law school and the kind of research that I had done as part of legal scholarship in law school. So here's the paragraph where I talk about my research experience and specific interests and how it related to some of the things that were happening in this department at the time that I was writing this statement of purpose. My research into the copyrightability of avatars led me down the complicated road of identity online, and I want to explore more about how people form these identities, how they are connected to the visual representation of an avatar, and how the mechanics of virtual worlds facilitate the formation of character versus identity. I have also become something of an expert on the law of virtual worlds, but they are changing so quickly and encompassing so many new issues that I've needed to have a real understanding of how they work. The way that people interact with their virtual environment is all about technology, after all, and the law is having trouble keeping up. And perhaps most notably, given my background in online communities and educational technology, particularly constructionism, I've learned about the complicated legal implications of people sharing creative work online. I also think that my legal background gives me a unique perspective, but I feel that my research interests fit seamlessly with any of the research groups working on virtual worlds, online communities, games, or social computing. Now, I do not think that this is a model example of this kind of thing. In fact, I think that that was probably a bit too scattershot. It could have been a bit more focused. I should have also mentioned specific faculty members who were doing work that was related to this specific projects. So again, this is not the strongest statement of purpose that I've ever seen. I also think that there are things about me as an applicant that were particularly compelling or at least unique, the law background being one of them. As I said in my video about why PhD applicants might be rejected, there's a lot of randomness in the process. Sometimes it works in your favor. I also tied my statement of purpose very specifically to Georgia Tech because that was where I did my undergraduate and my master's degree. So finally, a big piece of advice for your statement of purpose is get some other people to read it. Ideally, a mentor that you have who is a faculty member, for example. It's actually quite common to give your letter of recommendation writers a copy of your statement of purpose so that they know why you're applying to PhD programs. When you send it to them, you could say, and if you have any feedback on this, I would really appreciate it. That lets them give it to you or not, depending on if they have time to think about that kind of thing. You might also ask PhD students that you know to give it a read for you, but really as much feedback as you can get would be really helpful. So I'm going to link to my entire playlist of videos about applying for PhD programs. If you have any more specific questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below and I will answer if I can. And of course, stay tuned in the spring. I will definitely be doing some videos about how to choose a PhD program if you have options, how to conduct yourself on a site visit if you have an interview, questions to ask potential advisors, that kind of thing. So definitely subscribe if you think that you will be thinking more about this later. And most of all, good luck with this process as you're going through it. I really hope that you find the perfect PhD program for you. And also remember that if it doesn't work out for you this time, it could be for many reasons that have nothing to do with how strong of an applicant you are overall. So I would encourage you to keep trying if a PhD is really what you want to do. Okay, so good luck. I'm Casey, and thanks for watching.